All right, this might be the best method to smoking a brisket, but let's give it a try and then we'll find out. All right, so what I'm talking about is separating the flat and the point of the brisket. I don't know why more people don't do this. Probably just because they like that full brisket look. And personally, I love those slices that have some of the point and flat meat on them. That is probably the best cut of brisket. But splitting up the flat and the point just makes a ton of sense. You'll be able to get a really nice trim on both pieces of meat, and they should cook a little bit quicker. If you've done brisket, you'll know that sometimes your flat's finished and you're waiting for the point to finish up, or vice versa. So this way you can cook your point absolutely perfectly and the flat absolutely perfectly, because you can pull them off at separate times. You can get them wrapped at separate times, whatever you want to do. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is go ahead and get this brisket trimmed. And this is a 13, almost 14 pound brisket. It is USDA choice, but it is Angus beef. These are the best briskets I can find in my area, and a lot of times the cut of the meat is not very good. What I mean by that is how it is trimmed off and just how thick the flat is, things like that. These are not the best briskets you can get. So I usually purchase a larger brisket than I need, and I trim it down to size and get one really nice brisket. So hopefully this one turns out good, and we'll see what it takes to get this thing split apart. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so we're gonna get this flipped over, cut open, and out of this package. Now I just want to pat this brisket dry, and we can see we got a nice gash there. Like I said, these are not the best briskets, but it's what I can get my hands on, and they taste actually pretty good if you can get a decently sized one. So I think this might be a really good method for someone just getting into smoking briskets. I know it might be a little daunting thinking about splitting this thing up, but it'll give you a chance to really understand the different parts of the muscle and where the fat goes throughout the two. That's really going to help you when you're trimming up a whole brisket. Now, getting these things split isn't really that big a deal, so let me show you how it gets done. So if you look here, you can see a huge pocket of fat right in here. This goes underneath the whole muscle of the point, and that's what's separating the flat and the point. So if you look on the bottom here, you can see this piece of fat. This is the first piece of fat that most people will pull out of a brisket right here. This is the other end of that fat there. This is where it comes out, splitting the flat here on the bottom. This is your flat, and then your point starts right about here. And on the top, you can see the flat is here. So this is all your point. And I don't know if you can notice here, but you can see it's a little darker here, and you can kind of see exactly where this point ends. So the point is going to end right about here, and then the rest will be the flat. So what I'm going to do here is trim this off. So we're not going to need that. And I will get it flipped over, and we will try and pull this piece of fat out here. A lot of times you can grab it with your hand and get it out. This one, not so much. And another great thing is you can kind of practice. You're going to want to do this on a full brisket, but if you're splitting the brisket and you mess this process up, it's not a big deal because you're going to be cutting most of this out anyway. So again, I think this might be good for the first time brisket smoker. Really lets you learn about the brisket. We don't want to risk it for the brisket. So we can see here, this is the fat we're going to want to trim into here. So I'm just going to go in a little bit. I'm going to have to turn this away from the camera. Now it's a pretty large pocket of fat in here, so you don't really have to worry about scoring the meat too much. And let me show you on the side here. You can kind of see where this flat and the point meet right here. See where that fat is? So I'll try and turn this towards the camera so you can see. It's going to be a little more difficult for me to trim here, but I'm going to do my best. So you'll just see the seam of fat, and just get in there and just pull it apart with your fingers and just work the tip of your knife. If you start cutting into the meat, you will notice it. And having a cold brisket is ideal for this. The colder it is, the more it just wants to separate on its own. And you're going to want to try and leave a fat cap on the brisket flat for sure. But you can see we're starting to peel that flat back a little bit, and you can really see that seam in here. So just keep pulling it back and just work it with the tip of your knife. And like I said, if you start seeing the meat, just be careful. Just give it a yank, and sometimes the fat will just pull right off. Just take your time. There's one big fat seam here. Like I said, I want to try and leave a fat cap on here, but we're losing some of it. It'll be okay. So you can see now clearly the two separate muscles here of the point and the flat. You can see that there. We're almost at the end. All right. So we are getting right to the end here. And the point gets very thin towards the end. So just keep that in mind. And there we go. Got a nice point and a decent flat here. Yeah, it's a little hacked up, but it'll be all right. I just want to trim some of this fat down on here. So we have a good amount on the flat. And I want to trim this down so we don't have any scraggly end pieces or thin spots. Got a lot of fat here. Trim this out. All right, so it is a little thin on one end here, but I think we'll be okay. Got a lot of fat here. And I'm gonna try and stick to that 1/4 inch of fat. Just cut all this silver skin out of here. I don't like keeping that on there because that will make the brisket turn a little bit, curl up as it warms up. So this doesn't look too bad. Again, we just want to round everything off. Aerodynamics is the key. So round this corner out here. Not too bad. Flip this around. All right, so the top side of this looks decent. All right, let's get this flipped over to the bottom. Get this cleaned up a little bit. All right, just want to round some of these edges off and our flat will be done. You could just keep trimming this if you want, but you gotta stop somewhere. So I'm not a fan of how thin it is over here, but I think we'll be okay. We're just gonna leave it as it is. So there's our flat, looking really nice. Let's go ahead, move on to this point. We'll start on this bottom side here, work some of this fat out. Now, like I said, it gets really thin here on the end of the point, so we're gonna have to just cut this down a little bit. And I'll trim this edge off as well. Alright, so I want to get a little more of this fat out of here. It's a pretty big pocket of fat on this side of the point. Just trying to get the most of it off there as you can. So, like I said, we got a nice gash there. We're gonna have to sacrifice some of this as much as I don't want to because it's already pretty small. Just gonna do my best here. Trim down the fat on the top. Now you can trim more fat off of the point because of how much is inside the meat itself. But fat is flavor, so you're gonna want to leave some of it on there. So this looks pretty good. It just needs to be shaped for aerodynamics, like these corners here. Should be cut off. And then round it out. All right, so we are looking pretty good here. See, we got a nice little point here, and then we got our flat over here. So another great thing about this, on top of everything I've already talked about, is now you're able to do two different things with these. You can cook this up, brisket flat, perfectly, get some beautiful slices out of it. A nice cooked brisket flat sliced up is absolutely delicious. Now with the point over here, you can turn this into some awesome burnt ends if you want, or go ahead and just cook it like a brisket and slice it up as well. So if you want, you could throw out a bunch of these flat slices that are gonna be good, then have a bunch of brisket burnt ends as well. But these are all set. Let's go ahead and get these seasoned. So what I have here is a little bit of pickle juice. Now I usually don't use a binder, but I'm going to be using this pickle juice today because I have it out. Now we're going to go with a pretty simple seasoning today. It's going to start off with some black pepper. Always go on with black pepper first if you're doing seasoning separately, because you want the black pepper to be coated the most on these briskets. The black pepper helps get smoke flavor and you get an awesome bark. So it's very important that this is first, and we want a good amount. Same thing, get some of this pepper on our point. Now with some kosher salt. Now here I have some beef bouillon. I've been experimenting with this, and this is sodium-free beef bouillon, just because we already have all that salt on there. I'm just gonna go on with a little bit here. Not too much. Curious to see what kind of flavor we're gonna get out of this. Very powdery, so this is why you want to add this last. If you put this on first, it's pretty much gonna block all your other seasoning. All right, let's get these flipped over. We'll get these top sides seasoned. Same method, pepper first, then our salt, and then finish off with that beef bouillon. And you could always just go salt, pepper, garlic would be a great option. You can throw some Lowry's on here, whatever you want. You could try 2 different seasonings since we got 2 different pieces of meat here. Maybe you want some sweeter on the point, you know, with all that fat in there. It's a little savory, a little sweetness would help. Maybe you're looking for a little spice. It's up to you. All right, so these are all seasoned up. I'm just gonna let these sit here for about 5 minutes or so. Kind of let that seasoning get a little wet. So I'll see you right back here. All right, so these have been chilling for about 5 minutes. I'm about ready to get them on the smoker, but I wanna put an internal thermometer into these so I can monitor temps. And today I'm gonna be using my ThermoPro Twin TEMPSPIKE. This is gonna be perfect because it comes with 2 probes, and it also has a screen on the base that reads both of your ambient and internal temperatures. So if anything happens with the app, connectivity wise or anything, you won't be in the dark. You'll still be able to get your temps on here, because if you have a wireless meat thermometer, you know there are always connectivity issues with these things. So at least with this, I can come out and check my temps right here. So I might not even hook it up to the app, we'll see. But this is an awesome wireless meat thermometer, and I believe it's around $100. You might be able to get it on sale for 90 or so. ThermoPro notifies me when there's going to be sales on my link down below, so I will let you guys know if there's a deal on these. But if you're interested in one of these, I'll have that link down below, like I said. If you do buy one of these, make sure to use that link, because I get a little bit back from it, and it is no cost to you, but it really helps out the channel. All right, so we're right around 225. See, I got some beef ribs going on in here. Make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any of my cooks. So I'm gonna get this point right down here. Stick that probe in a little further. And I want the meatier side towards where that heat's coming from. We gotta make sure we got room for that flat though. And let's get our flat right there. Pretty good. So I'm gonna get this flipped around. It looks like it's a little thicker on this end. Shape them a little bit. Now's your chance. I kind of like to scrunch up any of that thin area, try and just even out this cook. But that looks pretty good there. Let's get this closed up, and we will let these things smoke. All right, so we got that flat and the point on the smoker. I'm gonna maintain around 225, 250 for the first few hours. As the briskets cook and they start to get a little better bark on them, I'm going to gradually raise the temperature. You wanna start off nice and low. It's gonna give it some great smoke flavor. Then, once you get a nice bark and smoke flavor on there, you can really crank the temps up and get that fat to start rendering down. So these are probably gonna go for 3 to 5 hours before I do anything with them. At that point, I'll check them and probably give them a spritz. Now, most likely I'm going to wrap these, but I'm not gonna wrap them until that bark has set. And I'm looking for probably somewhere in the mid 180s. These are smaller pieces of meat, so we're probably not gonna hit too bad of a stall. But if we did, you don't wanna wrap during the stall. You wanna wait until you can get out of that stall. But I'll see you guys back at the smoker in a few hours, and we'll check on these briskets. All right, we are 4 hours in on the split brisket. Let's go ahead and take a look. Oh yeah, you can see these look really nice. So for internal temperature, we're at 174, and it was 172. 171 on white, 174 on black. And just check them out. Take a look at that point. Check out the bark going on the point over here. That is very nice. For 4 hours, I am pretty happy with the bark on these, and the flat is looking very nice as well. So I'm gonna let these go for a while more till about that mid 180 mark. This bark is coming along nice so far, but it's not where I want it to be yet. I want it to be a little bit darker than this before I wrap. So I'll probably see you back here in about 2 hours, and then these should be ready to wrap. So I will see you then. So we are at 6 hours on the split brisket, and surprisingly, both the flat and the point cooked at the same amount of time. Both of them are sitting at 195 degrees right now, but the bark is exactly where I want it. They're not finished yet, but I'm gonna pull them off, get them wrapped, and probably throw them on there for another hour or so. Let's go ahead and get this flat wrapped up first. So here I have some beef tallow that I've made. I have a video how to make this beef tallow. I'll make sure to put that down in the description if you're interested. But I want to get a few scoops of this tallow down on this paper. And let me go grab that flat so we can check it out. And here we are. Check that out. You can see the beautiful bark we got on there. That is what I was looking for. And it's definitely not tender enough right now, even though we're at that 195 degree mark. This is still gonna need quite some time. So I'm gonna lay it down there on the tallow. I'm gonna leave my temperature probe in. Obviously my ambient temp's gonna be a little off, but I'm not really worried about that right now. More concerned about the internal temp on this. All right, I'm gonna get this back on the smoker. A little more paper and a little more tallow, and let me go get that point. And there's our point. Check that out. It's like a little mini brisket almost. That's pretty cool. Looks just like a little miniature brisket. This is definitely feeling more tender than the flat, but again, this is going to need more time. This bark, though, that is incredible. That's what you're looking for. So let's go ahead, put this down on the tallow. Again, I'm going to leave that temp probe right in there like that. And since this one's sticking out, I'll just poke it through the paper there. Not ideal, but it'll work. And that is so much easier to wrap up than a normal brisket. But that's that. Let me go ahead and throw this on the smoker. All right, so the temperature on those briskets are going to drop a little bit since I just had them out and wrapped. So it looks like we are at about 185 degrees on the flat and 190 on the point. Now, since I pulled them off and wrapped them up with that cold paper and that cold tallow, the temperature of these is gonna drop a little bit. So it's gonna take a while to get these back up to temp. Now, we were at the 195 degree mark, and I'm looking to take these to a little over 200 degrees. So we were pretty close, but now that I wrapped them up, this is gonna push this cook a little bit further back. And that's what you want with the wrapping process. We got the beautiful bark that we wanted, so we're gonna wrap them up, finish them off, let all that fat inside render out perfectly. Then when these hit that 200, 203 degree mark and I probe them and they're done, I'm gonna pull them off, let them come down to about 140 to 160. I'm gonna pull them out of that butcher paper and then get it wrapped up with some fresh butcher paper and a little more tallow. Then I'm gonna throw them in my warming cabinet and let them sit there overnight. I do this with all my briskets. It just is a better quality brisket. If you wanted to, you could let them rest for 3 to 4 hours in a cooler with the same thing. But for me, just finishing up late at night and letting them go overnight works perfect. So let's jump ahead to tomorrow and see how these things came out. All right, so the briskets have been resting for about 10 hours or so. Like I said, what I did was let them cool down to 140 degrees. I took them out of that original butcher paper they were in, rewrapped them with fresh butcher paper and a little more tallow, then just threw them in my warmer. Now, I don't have a control on my warmer. It is preset at 160 degrees, so that's what these have been held at for the past 10 hours. Like I said earlier, you can easily do a 4-hour cooler rest if you want, but This method usually works better for me, time-wise, I'm saying. But these things smell fantastic, and I'm excited to see how they came out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get these unwrapped. We'll start with the flat, I suppose. Oh yeah. Beautiful bark on here. You can see nothing got stuck to the paper. And I love saving this paper for starting your fires. But go ahead and check that beauty out. That is some beautiful bark on there. Go ahead and just get a nice look at that. Nice looking flat here. But let's unwrap this point, see how this came out. Oh yeah. Our little mini brisket. Oh, this is super tender. Gotta be careful with that. And there it is. You can see how tender it is. And it's funny because it does look like a little miniature brisket. If we didn't cut this, this is how this would have gone. The point would have sat right on top of there like so. All right, so before I slice this up, I just gotta take a few pictures, so I'll be right back. All right, I can't wait any longer. I gotta slice these up and give them a try. So let's go ahead and start with that flat. Now what I'll do is slice this right down the middle here. Get a nice look. Oh yeah. Check that out. Nice smoke ring. But let me try and get a slice off here so we can see how this thing actually came out. It's shredding a little bit, might be a little overcooked on the edges here. You can see little pieces coming off, but this looks pretty good. Not a bad slice of brisket at all. You can see it's nice and juicy. So you can see it holds up to its own weight. It's a thinner slice here. Let's do a bend test, huh? Not bad. I thought this was gonna break for sure. So this actually isn't really too overcooked at all, and then you can see the tenderness pulls right apart. This is a perfectly cooked flat for sure, and like I said, flat's always gonna be a little dry, especially when it's removed from the point. That's why you wanna keep a nice fat cap on there. The fat cap on this flat wasn't too big. Let me go ahead and give this a try. Amazing brisket. It's got a little different flavor, a little more beefiness. I think that's from that bouillon. It's a good combo of seasoning for sure. I don't know what to say. This is just good brisket flat. Now you can tell the fat is rendered down perfectly when it has a nice subtle sweet flavor to it, and that's exactly what this has. Nice thing about the leanness of the flat is you can really eat this stuff all day long. But let's move on to the point. Now at this point, you'd probably be tempted to slice it this way, but the grains on this point are actually going in this direction. So you're gonna wanna slice it up like this. So let me go right down the middle, get you a nice cross section here. Nice and tender. A little bit overcooked on the end of the point there. I can feel it's a little dry back here, but that is a beautiful looking point. See how tender this thing is? Nice and juicy. That's all what a point is about. So like I mentioned earlier, I think this would be perfect for some burnt ends. Go ahead, cube this up, toss in some sauce, throw it on your smoker for a little bit to let that sauce set, and you're gonna have a delicious appetizer. Let me see if I can get a slice off of here. This bark is nice and crunchy. I love that. Oh yeah, super fall apart tender. Look at that. Come on. Is that not a nice piece of brisket right there? Beautiful smoke ring again. Beautiful rendered fat. Let me go ahead and get some slices off here. Won't take much. It's just a fall apart. Actually, let me show you. Just check that out. This falls right apart. And I want to try this right here. Here we go. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. This is cooked perfectly. It's got a little bit of that sweetness from the rendered fat, plenty of black pepper flavor there. I love it. And this stuff is so tender. If you made burnt ends out of this, it would be incredible. Now, if you're interested in anything I used in my video, I'm gonna put a link to everything down below. I'll put the link to the ThermoPro twin temp spike down there. I have a special ThermoPro link. If you use it, you can get a discount, so be sure to check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, really helps out. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe right over here. And if you want to see another one of my barbecue videos, be sure to check this one out over here. But most importantly, get out there, smoke something good.